So today I want to go over an Abattoir of Zir ready Druid build, and this is going to be a petrifying Stormclaw build. And if you haven't heard, there's going to be some pretty massive changes coming to the Abattoir of Zir that should be released before this video is released. One of the biggest ones being a 20% reduction in the damage enemies deal to you in the Abattoir of Zir. So with all of these different changes, this build should be very strong for the Abattoir of Zir. And this version of a Stormclaw Druid is going to be using 4 different uniques, but all you really need for Stormclaw Druids to work is the Great Staff of the Crone. Its special is Claw is now a Storm skill and also casts Storm Strike at up to 150% normal damage, so whenever you Claw, it also casts Storm Strike, and it gives you a pretty massive increase to ranks in Claw. But that brings us to our skill tree. We're starting off putting 5 into Claw, and the Storm Strike. Claw is going to be the main ability we're actually using. Upgrade 1 increases its attack speed, upgrade 2 has a chance to use it twice, and whenever this procs and Claw is used twice, it'll also cast 2 Storm Strikes. Then we have Storm Strike, which is going to be used anytime we use Claw. We're getting damage reduction from it. It bounces to nearby enemies for some cleave damage. Upgrade 1 has a chance to immobilize. Upgrade 2 has a chance to make enemies vulnerable. This is going to be a good way in how we keep enemies vulnerable all the time. And then we're going down to our defensives. We're using Earthen Bulwark, which is just a barrier. Upgrade 1 makes you unstoppable, and then Upgrade 2 will fortify you, going to be one of the good ways in how we keep ourselves fortified. Then we have Cyclone Armor, gives non-physical damage reduction when you activate it, knocks enemies back. Upgrade 1 causes those enemies to be slowed. Upgrade 2 gives us damage reduction every 10 seconds. Then we're taking Blood Howl, which is just a big heal. Upgrade 1 reduces the cooldown on kill. Upgrade 2 gives us 15% increased attack speed. And because we're constantly resetting this, and because we get increased attack speed, you want to use this on cooldown. Then we're going down, we're taking Hurricane. This is primarily to proc other effects. Upgrade 1 slows enemies. Upgrade 2 makes enemies deal less damage. Then we're going down and taking Petrify. This stuns all non-boss enemies within range, makes you deal increased critical strike damage to them. If it's against a boss, it lasts longer and makes you do even more critical strike damage. And because of how we have this build set up with one of our uniques, we'll be able to constantly use this because we'll be resetting it so much. And this is very strong for the Abattoir of Zir before you get to the bosses because you can constantly CC everything. If you play this build correctly, you can sometimes stun lock massive groups of elites. Then we're going down, we're taking Earthen Mites for our capstone, which is a lucky hit. You have up to a 5% chance to restore all your spirit, which we don't care about, and to cause all your attacks to be guaranteed crits for 5 seconds. That's the main thing we care about. And the chance for this to proc is increased to 10% for crits and when hitting CC'd enemies. And with this build fully put together how I have it, I'll have Earthen Mite up like 80 to 90% of the time when in active combat. Then we have our passives, starting with Predatory Instinct for increased critical strike chance. We have increased movement speed while in Werewolf, lasts for 3 seconds after, so more movement speed is always going to be good. Then 3 into Ancestral Fortitude for increased resistances, 3 into Vigilance for damage reduction after using a defensive. This will be up majority of the time. Then we're going down, we're taking 1 into Elemental Exposure to get higher in the tree. We're going 3 into Charge Atmosphere. Every 8 seconds a lightning bolt hits a nearby enemy for some damage. This will also be increased by other parts of the build. We have Electric Shock. When dealing lightning damage to an enemy, you have a chance to immobilize them, but if they're already immobilized, you deal massively increased lightning damage to them. Then Bad Omen, another lucky hit, up to a 30% chance when dealing damage to a vulnerable or immobilized enemy. You strike them with a lightning bolt for more damage. And all of these different lightning bolts are spawning are also going to proc some additional effects and be buffed up for some additional effects. And this is some of the reason why with this build, damage numbers pop up so quickly. They just stack on top of each other and you legitimately can't see any of your damage numbers correctly. And then we're taking Neurotoxin so we can get Toxic Claws, critical strikes with werewolf skills, apply a poison to an enemy. We don't care about the poison damage, we just care that they're poisoned. 3 into Envenom, you and your companions deal increased critical strike damage to poison enemies. This is also really good to get 3 on your necklace with as well. Then we're going down, taking 3 into Defiance. Nature skills deal more damage to elites. And next up we have our Spirit Boons, Wariness to take reduced damage from elites, Swooping Attacks for increased attack speed, Iron Feather for increased max life. This is multiplicative and we will be having a good amount of max life, almost 17k right now without any potions or anything. Then we're taking Bolster. This is one of the main ways we keep ourselves fortified. So we have 3 defensive abilities. All these will give us 15% of our max life as Fortify, especially when you get into the Abattoir of Zir and are taking a lot of damage. You're going to need this for Fortify. And then we're taking Overload, a lucky hit. Dealing lightning damage has up to a 40% chance to cause that target to emit static discharge, dealing AoE lightning damage. And this will proc a ton as well because we hit so quickly. And then we have our Vampiric Powers, starting with Undying. Heal you for 3% of your life when casting anything. Double this below 50%. 20%, our main sustainability. Then we have Hectic. For every 5 basic skill casts, one of your cooldowns is reduced by 2 seconds. And since anytime we cast a basic, it casts another basic, we can also double that. And we have massively increased attack speed. This will be reducing our cooldowns massively. It can also reduce your ultimate. Then we have Metamorphosis, our main way for Unstoppable. We'll deal some extra damage, and this will be very helpful mixed with one of our uniques to constantly reduce our ultimate cooldown. Then we're using Ravenous, another lucky hit, up to a 20% chance to increase your attack speed by 40% of your movement speed. Currently, just standing here, it's 55% increased attack speed. This will go even higher with all of our other movement speed increases while in combat. Then Moonrise, hitting an enemy with a basic skill grants you 4% attack speed up to 5 times for 20%. When you get max stacks, you gain 160% multiplicative basic skill damage and even more movement speed. So these two vampiric powers add massive amounts of damage to Stormclaw Druids. And then next up, we have our Paragon boards. I'm primarily going to be going over the board and glyph selection, but there'll be a build planner in the description if you want to follow point by point. Now, I'm currently not using Tears of the Blood anywhere on my boards yet, just because I haven't been doing the Abattoir of Zir and they are nerfing a bunch of it, so I'm not going to be doing it until those nerfs have come out. And one of the big things is changing how quickly you'll be able to level up Tears of the Blood, because before, this thing wasn't even worth leveling up. It was just too absurdly slow. But if we're going to be able to level this glyph up even decently quickly, you'll be putting this in the slot of one of our other glyphs. I just haven't decided which one yet, so I'll do an update if that becomes the case. But starting off, we have the Territorial glyph, increased damage to close enemies, damage reduction from close enemies. Then we're going up, taking the Thunderstruck board. Storm skills deal increased damage based on your damage versus close and damage versus distant. This is currently 33% multiplicative damage, and you can get even more damage with this if you get some specific rolls on your weapon. And the glyph we're taking is Earth and Sky, and this buffs all magic nodes within range. The secondary effect is nature skills deal increased damage to crowd controlled or vulnerable enemies, and this is really good because we get damage reduction from vulnerable enemies, get some storm skill damage, and one of the main reasons you take glyphs like this is so you can get massively increased stats, so you can get the secondary effect of rare nodes throughout your boards. Then we're going over to the right, taking the Heightened Malice board. While 3 or more enemies are poisoned near you, deal massively increased damage. One of the best legendary nodes in the game. The glyph we're taking is Fang and Claw, another boost to magic nodes, so we get more damage to poison enemies, more damage reduction, and more intelligence and dexterity. Then we're going up, we're taking the Inner Beast board. The glyph we're taking is Undaunted, increased damage while fortified, damage reduction while fortified. Make sure you're getting the increased attack speed from these rare and magic nodes. This will give you some massively increased attack speed for only a few points. Then we're going over to the left, we're taking the Earthen Devastation board. The glyph we're taking is Electrocution, massively increased Lightning Bolt and Dancing Bolt damage, and we have a bunch of different procs which will proc Lightning Bolt. And then the secondary effect is one of the main reasons we're taking this. Enemies damaged by your Lightning Bolt or Dancing Bolt take 20% multiplicative increased damage from you for 5 seconds. So that's a massive damage increase just getting the secondary effect. Then we're going back over, going down, going to the right, and we're taking the Lust for Carnage board. And the glyph we're taking is Spirit, increased critical strike damage, and critical strikes increase the damage an enemy takes from you by 2% up to 12%. And there are more magic and rare nodes for more increased attack speed for massively increased damage. And then next up, we have our gems, our uniques, and our legendary aspects. In your weapons, you're going to want basic skill damage. In your armor, you're going to want max life. And in your jewelry, you're going to first want to make sure you're capped out on resistances. So you're going to want to put any gems you need to cap your resistances. I have 3 different 30% gems to cap all of mine. You may have more resistances, and you could just put in some resist to all. And if you don't need any more gems for your resistances, just put Skull for more armor. And then that brings us to our uniques. So our helmet, we're using Godslayer Crown. When you stun, freeze, or immobilize an elite enemy or damage a boss, it pulls in all enemies, and you deal massively increased multiplicative damage to them for 3 seconds as a 12-second cooldown. So this will just pull everything in. You deal massively increased damage. Then on our boots, this is where we can have our ultimate up all of the time. We have Flicker Step. Each enemy you evade through reduces your active ultimate by 4 seconds up to 10 seconds per evade. And because these boots come with attacks reduce your evade's cooldown by 1.2 seconds, we use our evade, we attack like once or twice, we have our evade back, we evade again, and evading through packs of enemies will always reduce our ultimate by 10 seconds. So we evade 3 to 4 times and we'll have our ultimate back. This is incredibly helpful in the Abattoir of Zir Zir, where you want to keep enemies locked down. We already went over our Great Staff of the Crone, and then finally we have our Malignant Ring. When casting an ultimate skill in 5 seconds after, you pull all enemies to you, deal some base physical damage, and this damage increase 1% by every point of willpower you have. Now this build isn't super optimized around that willpower. This will deal some decent damage, but it also helps massively to pull everything in 2 separate times. So you can group everything together, you can deal massive AoE damage, and because of one of our legendary aspects, when everything's clumped up like that, we'll just be dealing massively increased damage. Then for our legendary aspects on our necklace, basic skills grant increased attack speed, so just massively increased attack speed, always really important for basic skill builds. Then for our 2 offensive aspects, we have your Earthen Might. Key passive also applies to your storm skills. This is our capstone we went over, so we have guaranteed crits most of the time. Then up to a 20% chance when dealing lightning damage to overload the target for 3 seconds, causing direct damage you deal to them to pulse for more damage on surrounding targets. This is why grouping everything up, stunning them, and just dealing damage with our basic skills will just multiply our AoE damage massively. It's because of this effect. And then for our defensive aspects, we have basic skills grant you damage reduction, and we have disobedience for percent stacking armor. These are very important to be able to stay alive in the Abattoir of Zir. And then finally, we have our gear stats. Now this build is using 4 different uniques right now, so that's 4 pieces you don't have to gear. That can be pretty nice once you get later into the game. But then for our chest piece, you want all damage reduction. Damage reduction from close, from distant, from poison, from fortified. All damage reduction. Then on our legs, you want the same thing. All damage reduction. Damage reduction while injured is really nice as well, especially in the Abattoir of Zir where it's dealing the most damage anywhere in the game. It gets you low, a massive damage reduction kicks in, and then you can also get something like dodge chance. Then for our gloves, attack speed, critical strike chance, and lucky hit chance are the main rolls you want. Then any other damage roll, critical strike damage with werewolf skills, critical strike damage, any other damage roll is going to be fine. Then for our necklace, you want movement speed, a damage reduction like damage reduction while fortified or from poisoned. You want ranks 2 and venom passive. That's a really good roll to get a lot more damage. And then something like a total armor roll is also going to be pretty good. And depending on how much damage the enemies in Abattoir of Zir are dealing after the changes, it might actually be better to change, say, this total armor roll to, say, a percent willpower roll, which will give you increased willpower for just increased damage on your skills, but it'll also give us massively increased damage on the special effect of our Malignant Ring. And then finally, for our legendary ring, you want max life, lucky hit chance, and critical strike chance. I wasn't able to get this on this ring, but the critical strike chance isn't as important as in some other builds because of our capstone. But then you just want any damage rolls. You can get critical strike damage with werewolf skills. I think you can get damage at close on rings, so that would also be good. Any other damage roll is going to be fine. But that's the entirety of this build, and this build should be very strong for the Abattoir of Zir, especially after all the nerfs and changes that are coming to it. And depending on how much less damage the enemies are actually dealing and how different it feels in there may be some decent sized changes to this build. But we'll just have to wait and see when the changes come out. That's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.
must wait. I'm not ready.